Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. The last couple of stories in the book of Judges are kind of bizarre stories, and they are probably there to illustrate the difficulty or the chaos in this nation, the difficulty that this nation had in following Yahweh, in figuring out who it was, and in figuring out what it was all about. There's a line that keeps coming up in there. It's in Judges chapter 19, verse 1. In those days there was no king in Israel. It comes up a number of times through those last few chapters. It even ends the book. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. So from chapter 19 through 21, that phrase comes up 4 times to explain some rather bizarre stories who really never make it into the Sunday school lessons. I'm sure you didn't have these stories in Sunday school at all. The first story involves a man from Ephraim who inherits some money and decides what he wants to do, set up his own worship site. So he sets up a shrine. He has a graven and molten images made, and he says, I need priests, so he appoints his son to be priests. Now, if you've been following along, kind of keeping score at home on this, you realize that he's violated a bunch of laws out of the book of Leviticus and Deuteronomy especially. First of all, there was to be only one worship site, and that was at Shiloh. God didn't plan for a bunch of worship sites scattered all around. Secondly, they weren't to make any graven images or molten images, and that's exactly what this guy's done. And thirdly, the priestly tribe was the tribe of Levite. You weren't supposed to pull Levites out of your family if you were an Ephraimite. You weren't supposed to pull priests out of your family if you were an Ephraimite. And that's what he does. Well, he recognizes that error down the road, and when he encounters a Levite, he hires the Levite to be his personal priest. So now at least his sons have been replaced by a Levite priest whom he hired to do this. So the guy has his personal worship site, his personal idols, and his personal priest. A group from Dan had been living a little too close to the Philistines evidently, and a group from Dan decided that what they needed to do was maybe scout out some new territory. And so the group from the tribe of Dan encounters this Ephraimite with his little shrine and his priest, and they make an offer that this Levite priest can't refuse, and so they take the guy along with them way up north to the northern part of the kingdom and establish a new location for the tribe of Dan. Dan had started in the middle part of the nation, and it now resides in the northern part of the nation, and they have brought along this Levitical priest that had this Ephraimite had obtained. Now the story, once again, probably is there as much as anything to just illustrate chaos. There's no religious order here. There's no political order here. The tribe of Dan gets tired of living here, so they go live up here. And it also probably describes why by the time you get to later New Testament, or later Old Testament, the tribe of Dan is way up north and not in the central hill country of Israel. There was no king in Israel. Everyone did as he thought was right. And the result of a lack of leadership and a lack of focus and a lack of recognition that God was king, the result was absolute chaos. I suspect that's the result today as people forget who the king is.